Hello, friends. JJ Hunt here with my very good pal and constant collaborator, Christine Malec. How are you, Chris? How's life treating you?
I'm great. I love the autumn. I'm very happy in the fall.
So, today we are going to be talking about reversing our roles when working on visual descriptions or image descriptions. This is something that you and I have been interested in for a while, Chris. So traditionally, the way a visual description job unfolds is that I, as the cited describer, would be contacted by an outfit that has images that need to be described, like a museum or an art gallery or a production company, something like that. They would send me the digital images and sometimes some contextual information about the exhibit or the artists. And then I would look at the images, study them, and then write visual descriptions. Once those initial description drafts are reasonably polished, I send them to a consultant who is a description user from the blind low vision community, a professional like Chris. And then they would give me feedback. They would ask questions. They might suggest edits. I would address those notes in a new draft and then send the descriptions to the client for some curatorial notes. Then sometimes they're published as is without my touching them again, but sometimes there's another round of writing for a few of the descriptions in the batch based on those curatorial notes. Of course, all of this is a service for primarily for the blind low vision community. And blind low vision community members are definitely involved in that process. But in the past, the bulk of the work has been done by sighted describers, right? The job required, essentially by definition, the ability to see the images that were going to be described. And so that has meant an imbalance. Sighted folks maintain leadership roles and community members support. Would you say that's a fair assessment, Chris, of like your experience in this world?
Yes, perfectly.
So now that structure, that approach to visual description writing, sighted describer, blind low vision consultant, is kind of going the way of the dodo. With AI writing getting so much better and being faster and cheaper, as in virtually instantaneous and free, the entire description model is being rewritten. So Chris and I figured if the model is going to be turned upside down anyway, maybe there's an opportunity to rearrange it so that the blind and low vision creators have more control and agency. With AI in the mix, from a technical standpoint, a human visual interpreter isn't strictly necessary. The AI can be managed and prompted by blind low vision community members directly. And this is already done in very casual personal situations all the time. Like Chris, I know you use AI for this kind of description just constantly in your day-to-day life, right?
Daily, multiple times per day for a range of things that I couldn't even encompass in an in an essay. I'm using it multiple times per day for things.
And like what, so I mean, I know, like you say, so many, but like what are a few kind of tangible examples of the way
hmm
you use this kind of AI description?
I could be trying to identify products in my kitchen that are in similar packaging. I could be out and wanting to figure out exactly where I am. If I'm looking for a particular building, I can take a photo. If, say, I'm meeting a sighted person and I've been, say, dropped off by one person waiting for someone else. Say I got out of an Uber. This was a great use case. I got out of an Uber and I was waiting for a friend to pick me up. So I took a photo of where I was and I sent them. I could get the image described. So I made sure I had the right
Mm.
orientation where there was information about where I am. Like there's a sign that says or something. So I could make sure it was an accurate photo that showed where I am, send it to my friend. Um, I was on the train the other day and someone said I was having a conversation and she made a remark about what she was wearing without really explaining it. So I'll admit it, I surreptitiously took my phone out and I was not looking at the camera and I just sort of nonchalantly took a little photo and got AI to tell me a bit about what she was wearing and what stop am I at? Did I lose track of what stop I'm at? So the door's open, I take a photo. Yep, this is the station I'm at.
Yeah.
And that's just scratching the surface, honestly, of the use cases for AI in my daily life.
I mean, that's incredible. There's just so many opportunities to get a description of one kind or another through AI. But I think it's fair to say that gallery quality descriptions are a little bit different, right? Like a lot of the stuff
Hugely,
you're using.
hugely.
Yeah. And I think I'm inclined to suggest maybe that the descriptions being churned out by AI aren't quite ready for professional publication. Even if you tell the AI that you're doing this, I would like you to describe this with, gallery level precision or something like that. The, the output isn't professional publication ready as is. Would you agree with that?
Well, yes, and for one basic reason, which is that it hallucinates. It can
Yeah,
get things factually wrong, strong and wrong, right? It can
that's
say
right.
something that's absolutely not true or miss a completely important detail. So yes, AI descriptions on the raw are, not gallery. They're information, they're interesting,
Yeah,
they're useful, they're something in term instead of nothing, if that's all my options are. But no, they are not
not
creating finished products.
that's right. So you and I have talked, we all with all of these things at play, you and I have been talking about what this means for our professional lives, right? Like with AI being as good as it is, but not good enough, and with leadership roles being what they have been in the past, and the fact that AI is kind of putting me out of business as a describer in lots of ways. Like we've been talking about this and trying to consider a new approach, right? A bit of a role reversal that turns the AI into a positive tool, not just a job killer, right? An approach where you write the descriptions using AI as your primary tool for gathering visual information, and then I maybe consult to make sure that the description is accurate and appropriate, right? And we've been talking about this approach for a while now, but we needed the tech to get a little bit better, right? The tech is growing, it's going better. Large language models, they get better and better,
By the
very
second.
quickly. Yeah, literally. And we also needed a project of the right scale with some variation in the images, right? This wasn't going to work if we just do it with one or two pictures, and if we do it where all the pictures are the same. So we needed the project to be right. And frankly, we also needed a collaborative client who wasn't afraid to experiment and push the boundaries on behalf of the community. So all of those things finally came together when the Disability Collective asked us to write the descriptions for 20 years later, The Inaccessibility of Ontario, which is a photography exhibition of 13 images showcasing the shortcomings of the AODA, the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disability Act. This is an exhibition that's going to be mounted at Daniel's Spectrum, which is a community cultural hub in Toronto's Regent Park neighborhood. And as we know, the Disability Collective is a disability-led organization, a disability-led arts organization, and they are a team of creatives. So when we answered their reach out with our pitch to have Chris write the descriptions with me as the consultant, I think they responded with a single word, all caps email, which was love.
And it's fully an experiment, and I like to comment about the word experiment because sometimes people will say this is an experiment in almost an apologetic tone, but when I hear the word experiment, I celebrate it because experimentation is how we learn things. And so we embarked on this big experiment, and it didn't necessarily go quite the way we thought it might go, and we it's led to some really interesting issues
Yes.
that surfaced and some conversation that we're going to have about what worked, what didn't. Is this a good model? Is this not a good model?
That's right. And then experiment really is the key word. And I love the framing of that, Chris. Uh, because we are doing something that is new and because there's this is AI. We want to be transparent about how we're using it. AI is not without its ethical issues and considerations. We wanted to share what we are learning. We all agreed that it would be great to work through this experiment kind of out loud and to open the door to more conversation. So that's what we're doing today. We're going to talk about what we've been working on. We're going to talk about how it went. We're going to kind of work through the process. Um, So how do we want to start this, Chris? I mean, you're the lead writer. Do you want
Yeah.
to take us through
I'm going to
your
talk through, I'll
process?
talk, yeah, I'll talk through my process. So JJ, we shared a folder. I had 13 photos to work with. And what I did was, um, there's lots of ways to access AI. What I used was JAWS Picture Smart, and I got a basic description. Then I asked for more details, which gets you a Chat GPT description, a Claude description, Claude being another large language model, and then a prompt to ask Chat GPT more questions about the image.
Hmm.
And so I started out with as robust a description as I was going to get from the large language models. And then in each case, there was often an element that I wanted to know more about. For example, footprints on the sand. Okay, tell me more about the footprints. And I would ask a question like that. Or there's a jetty pointing out into the, okay, I actually not that clear on what a jetty is. So tell me more about that. It might have been things like that. But also because this is part of a photographic exhibit. This is not someone's vacation photos. These are photos that were artistically crafted with high intention. I I had the prompt. I gave it the prompt. This photo is part of a photographic exhibit. To what extent can you comment on the artistry in the photo? And what that gave me was a bulleted list of like six different comments from the large language model that had to do with things like composition and balance and color and framing and what the eye looks at. And that to me was extremely informative because as a totally blind person, photos and the construction of what makes a really good photo, a really artistic photo, are sort of mysterious. So some of it, AI really wants to, as we've said before, AI really wants to tell you a story. It really wants to be your friend and give you a lot. And so it gave me a lot more than I needed, but it also gave me some really interesting things like, oh, the way these three objects are lined up lead the eye in this way, or the floral design on the backpack gives a splash of color, or the black and white aspect of the image does this. So with that in mind, I asked those questions, and then from all of that jumble of information, I I mostly cut and pasted. I didn't find myself drawn to do original writing because to me the writing had sort of already been done and I all I could do was just rewrite it. But the process was sort of one of asking the right questions and then taking bits and pieces, cutting and pasting, making a coherent paragraph that included stuff that was of interest to me in the image, what I thought the foreground was, what it seemed like the framing was, and what made the photograph impactful or artistic, without getting too editorially. Like AI really wants to editorialize. It will really
Hmm.
go to town on that. And so part of what I was doing was mediating its tendency to do that with my own interest in what makes a photograph artistic. So the process was really interesting, but there was a certain hollow aspect to it because I know AI can absolutely hallucinate and just get things flat out wrong. So there was an element in which I'm working with in good faith with information that I trust is correct
Yeah.
and composing something that could be completely wrong.
Yeah. 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 That would be like, I can imagine that as a real potential frustration. Like, am I writing something here?
Am I wasting my
Am I
time
wasting
here?
my time on this
Is
particular?
that really an elf? It's not a real person. That's an elf, and everyone can see that it's
Yeah,
an
that's just
elf.
a garden
It's
gnome in
just a
the
garden.
photo. It's not a subject. It's a yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And so
Yeah.
then I sent all of that. So I composed a description based on all of that, and I kept the text of the whole conversational process, and then sent it back to JJ. And nominally, his role was going to be a consultant and
Yeah.
decide, to judge. So when I know you approach these with great interest, but I'm trying to imagine your facial expression as you read one and then the next and then the next and then the next. Like, were you becoming bemused? What was happening for you as you were reading through them?
Well, it's interesting. Like some of them, uh, I was really excited. Like I went into this process really excited. because we've played with AI before, usually in fun and silly ways, but a few times in more professional ways too. And I was really excited to see what the output was going to be. Because, again, just to reiterate, all of your process wasn't so that at the end you could say, you could get a single description from the AI. You took all of those things and Frankensteined together a new
Hmm.
description.
Hmm.
That was a real difference. We had not done that before.
No.
So I was curious about how that was going to work. And sometimes I was like really pleasantly surprised. Like, oh yeah, look at this. It got all the basic information right. I found that for some of the images that were a little bit more straightforward, it understood the scene a little bit better. For some of the images that had more were slightly more abstracted or had more challenging visuals, it didn't get at all. And then there's the emotional part of like, wow, I am actively participating in my downfall. Like, this is also that someone else can take my job. Like, so yeah,
There's a few things that are worth highlighting here. And one is that one of our goals was to, and we're absolutely not the first people to work on this, but what parts of audio description can be community driven, like from the
yeah,
blind and low vision community? So the low hanging fruit is narration, which I have participated in with great satisfaction. So my voice appears here and there with some audio description. But people like Robert Kinget, they're doing active writing. They're writers of audio description and they're blind. So this work is not new. The AI is maybe a
yeah,
bit new, but you're but the idea of having a disability-led process was one that matters a lot to both of us. And so
yeah.
um I no, spoiler, we didn't love the process and it's not going to radically change how we work. We had some serious, concerns, but as an experiment, huge success. But I just want to reiterate that that was one of our goals is to what extent can this work be community led, and this was that element was really important for both of us. I'm curious about several parts. So some of those images had go what AI called as ghostly figures,
Yeah.
and so I have not read JJ's completed versions. Like the final versions of these will be edited and polished by JJ, but so I haven't read those yet. And so there were a few instances where they talked about the AI identified sort of ghostly or half there. And was that accurate?
Yeah, in fact, there are translucent images. So there's a as part of the exhibition, there is a set of 6 images, 3 pairs of 2, where in one of the images, there is this ghostly, as the AI said, this translucent rollator walker, so a mobility walker with wheels. And in one of the images in the pair, it's there. The rollator walker is there in this translucent form. And then in the paired image, it is not. It's just gone altogether. And so, yes, it is. I think it's not inaccurate to say that in the one half of the in the first image in the pair that it would be considered ghostly. Some of the
Mm,
reasons it said it was ghostly, I wasn't 100% like one of the reasons it said it was ghostly in one of the images was because it left a shadow. I don't think
mm,
of that as necessarily being a ghostly thing. I didn't
mm-hmm,
I didn't take it out. I left it in
okay.
because I didn't think it was expressly wrong. I'm
Hmm.
not sure I would have gotten there. There was a lot of that for me. A lot of my
Um,
the editing I did was no, I wanted the goal here was not to see if you and the AI could recreate a description that I would write. The goal was for you, with help from the AI, to write a description that is from your point of view, your perspective on the world. What questions are of interest to you? So, as an editor, as a vetter, um, I tried. this was a little bit challenging for me personally, but like I had to not make this sound more like me. In fact, I
Mm.
think I might not be the best person for this job. Um, as if this is a process that's going to move along, I think at the beginning, I'm a great person for this because you and I can have conversations about how to craft the descriptions, about how to get your point of view across in a description. I can be helpful in that regard. But the better, frankly, you get using these tools, the less you want me and the more you want just a pure editor, someone who has no audio description, no visual description experience.
Mm.
Because you don't want me inserting my opinion. You don't want me shaping this toward how
Um,
I would do it. You want me just to say, yes, that's a rollator walker. Yes, it's translucent. Yes, it's on a beach, period.
that's
That's my
really
thought.
interesting. And in a side conversation that we had before recording, you noticed that the description I crafted based on what I had at hand included more explicit verbiage about why the photo worked from an artistic point of view. So something
Yeah.
like the text frames the photo in a or the lines lead the eye this way, or things like that, which I found useful because photography is sort of mysterious to me, but which
Yeah.
you said you would not write that way because it, and I agree, it does come across as a bit teachy preachy in a
Yeah.
way that is not your style. And so that to me was a really interesting difference because since I was able to just encouraged to follow my own questions, like I'm thinking of the rollator. So in the initial, it said rollator walker, and I said, I don't actually know what that looks like. Describe it. And so I expressly asked AI to describe it and then took its
Yeah.
description of the rollator and embedded it in the description that I ended with. And so it was interesting to see where I went off on a little side trip that you might not have otherwise done.
Yeah, that was fascinating. And in some ways, that is, coming from a consultation background, I can imagine if I wrote that like if I was the writer and I wrote that it was a rollator, you would probably, as a consultant, say to me, I don't know what that looks
I
like.
would, yeah.
And I would add it in. And then there's the other side of it. It's like, why is this photo in black and white? What does that do for this? And then so when you ask that question and the AI says, well, the black and white really highlights this texture and it contrasts this and that, it's I'm not sure, like, that in some ways that's an opinion about why this
Hmm.
particular artist, that's an
Hmm.
interpretation that might be a little bit beyond the scope of
Yeah.
traditional AD. But I find it interesting enough that you had the question, you got an answer, and I think that can forward a description in a way, like you said, it's not if I do it, it's teachy preachy, right? And
Hmm.
and that's a little condescending and that's not cool. If you bend the rules in that regard, that's a community member talking to other community members. That's a different thing altogether. So I'm
It
I'm
rem
down with it.
It reminds me of projects that Vocali in Vancouver worked on, which was crowdsourced art description. So they had people
Yeah.
go to murals around the city and asked multiple people to describe them. And one of the reasons this was such fun and so well received is that when it's art, it's a bit like dance. I kind of want some interpretation
Yeah.
because it's an art form that I don't have direct access to. And so the artistic elements of it are not obvious to me the way they're obvious to the sighted viewer for whom they are sort of intended. And as a community member, I sort of had the freedom to just indulge myself in a way that you, as a sighted describer, maybe couldn't really. And I get why you wouldn't, but it just makes me think of the experiments people have done on crowdsourced description because when it's art, the overwhelmingly the feedback I've heard from the blind and low vision community is editorialize me, do it. Like tell me
Yeah.
how to feel because when you give me a straight up graphical description of a piece of art, I don't feel anything. So give me some feelings to think whether I might feel that way, or just tell me that's how it made you feel. And so it was interesting to engage with AI and a large language model about how that might, how it might be framed.
Yeah, and you know what I found really interesting is because we've talked about that a lot before, and we've also laughed about how the AI always wants to tell you a story. Um, when I was reading the descriptions that you wrote using AI and thinking about how I would have written it, because that was I can't not.
Of course.
It wasn't my goal, but
Yeah,
it
of
wasn't,
course.
but I couldn't not. Your descriptions with the AI were actually much more technical. Uh, whereas I would have probably tried to craft some version of a narrative. I would have tried to be neutral
Oh.
about it, but I would have
Oh.
tried to be a little bit more artful and turn each description into some version of a story. And not a capital S
Really?
story, but like a little bit of a story. Yeah. And I found your descriptions to be like, in some ways, not in all ways. Like there wasn't a lot of compositional mapping on our left,
Mm.
on our right, which
Mm.
is sometimes that can be
Ah,
too
you're
technical.
right. Yeah.
Um, but there also wasn't a lot of painting of a picture, as they sometimes say.
Oh.
Um, yeah, whereas but you
Oh.
wanted to know why black and white. Whereas I would have said, I would have been like, here's the black and white,
Yeah.
which I found really
Huh.
interesting.
I'm thinking about one of the black and white photos, which was the defining feature to me was I felt that I understood immediately what this photo was about, but the AI did not. And what I
Mm,
thought, partly because I knew the context, but I asked it describes a person walking with a dog in a very,
mm,
very snowy or suburban or urban setting, lots of snow. And it said the dog's on a leash, and I thought, I bet that's a guide dog harness. So I asked more about the leash, and it described it as rigid. But I had to stop there because if you lead an AI, it's going to go where it thinks you
yeah,
want it to go. So I didn't ask, could it be a guide dog harness? Because of course it's going to say, yeah, it could be. But for
interesting.
me, I felt like I knew immediately that that photograph was about the soul-destroying process of trying to navigate through a very snowy landscape with a cane or a guide dog. But
Yeah.
the AI could not extract that meaning. And so when you talk about a narrative or finding the story in something, do you remember that photo?
I do. And you know what's really fascinating? It's not a guide dog.
It's
It,
not?
no, no, not at all. It's a dog on a leash. The leash is actually long and twisted.
Oh,
It misread it.
oh my gosh.
You had the right instinct. What the AI didn't express clearly to you, and I know this because I read not only uh, the description that you came up with, that you Frankenstein together, but I got to read all the notes that you
Hmm.
sent me as well. What it didn't emphasize is that this person is walking down the middle of the street in the tire tracks in the snow,
Oh,
not
oh,
on the
oh, oh,
sidewalk,
oh,
because the
oh.
sidewalk has not been shoveled as much as the
Right.
road has. And so
Yes.
your instinct to say, I know that this is from an exhibition, a photo exhibition that is about accessibility and inaccessibility. So your instinct was bang on, but the information you were getting from the AI wasn't accurate enough for you uh, to fill in the specific gaps. I think the photographer is talking about that exact thing that you're talking about, but the way they're visually representing that is with a person and a dog having to walk down tire tracks in the road
I was
as
certain it
opposed to the
was a blind
sidewalk.
person with a guide dog because
Yeah.
emotionally, that's where I came to it from, is
Yeah.
remembering that terrifying process of trying to get through a snowy world. That's
So
very
interesting.
interesting. My mind was certain that that's what this photo was about because of the context, right?
Yeah.
20 years later. So my mind was certain that the AI was missing the harness point, and I had no
Yeah.
idea that it was missing the street tire tracks point.
Fascinating. This is why you got to experiment with this. What's it going to get right? What's it going to get wrong? So like what are some other things that you thought, oh, this is working well? And what were some other things that you're like, yeah, this is not working well for me from like your side of things, your initial writing?
Yeah, I liked. the parts of landscape that I could question. So, for example, one description of a mountainous landscape described the highest peaks in the distance as being silhouetted against the sky. And it's a phrase you often read, but I kind of went, what do you mean by that? So I asked the AI, what do you mean? And it wasn't super clear, but I think what it means is the sun is behind, and so it's like a shadow.
Yeah.
The peaks are dark. The peaks look dark because the sun is behind them. There's no light shining on the peaks. So the opportunity to question facile phrases like that was quite entertaining. One really interesting example that was very ambivalent was there's an image where you're seeing a body of water with a lot of prescription bottles in it.
Mhm.
And the AI did a good job, took a little prompting, but it did point out that the photos taken from almost like ground level. So the bottles are clearly the focal point, but in its editorializing, which it did a lot of, it interpreted this strictly as a photo about environmental issues
Mhm.
and pollution. And because I know that it's part of this exhibit, I feel strongly that it's not just about that.
Yes.
And so is that even relevant when describing the image? Not so sure. I don't think it
No.
is, but I had this big moment of like, I'm pretty sure it's more complicated than that. It's about how disabled people are medicalized and treated and the ways in which we find ourselves contributing to problems even when we don't want to. And so it's
Mm.
yes, it's there's an environmental component, but there was way more complexity there than the AI was positioned to understand. And again, relevant to the description, not so sure.
Yeah, that brings up another really interesting part. You are, as a describer of this image, you do have to have some of that information about what it means, your interpretation, like why or what should I be focusing on in my description, because that's what was clearly important to the artist who created the piece that I'm describing. Like that has to be somewhere in your mind. But is that the primary functional of the describer? That's like had you can how often do you consider that in your work as a consultant versus how often did you need to consider that in your role in this project as a writer?
Yeah, I don't know that. And I actually I emailed you and said, should I be reading the artist's statement?
Yeah,
Or like, is that something you do when you're going to describe images? Because I genuinely don't know because I've never done this before. And is that important to do before you're describing an image, or are you just describing the image?
yeah,
And I don't think we came to affirm there's the right way and the wrong way, but it's
yeah.
an interesting question. How much context should a describer have when they're describing an image, or are you going for neutrality and just based on what's in front of you?
Yeah. I mean, that snowy scene on the street that we just talked about. If we hadn't been considering the fact that this is part of an accessibility exhibition, um, we might not. The fact that the person is walking on the tire tracks in the street might have been mentioned in the description because that is a factually accurate thing to say about this. But the entire description could be about the beautiful snow, the fresh snow, and how
Mm-hmm,
lovely the snow is. And
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
these people are just going for a lovely walk. This person and their dog are just going for a lovely walk in the fresh snow.
And
Having
so
that information does have some impact, but it can't be the only thing you talk about, right? It can't be the giant stamp over the whole description. It's just got
and
to.
so another way I could have done this is in my prompt, I could have said for each photo, this is a photo from an exhibition called 20 Years Later that considers the effect of, you know,
Yeah,
accessibility legislation. I could have done that and I would have probably got different results. And I just didn't do that, and that's fine too. But
yeah,
that's a similar question is it worth prompting AI to do that? Because as we know, it gives you what it thinks you
yes.
want.
That's a really good. So the prompts that you gave it, how would you change? Like, what kinds of things do you think you could do to elicit different kinds of responses? Because I think that's key. What you're asking for and what you get will change how you write or how you assemble your description. So, like, what are some other approaches you could have gone with in like some different directions in terms of your prompting, your questions of the AI?
Mm. The paired photos is an interesting thing that I
Mm,
didn't dive into as hard as I could have. If I'd been using a different piece of tech to interact with the AI, I could have submitted two photos at once and asked comparative questions, or how are these complementing or contrasting? That's one thing I could have done. Yeah, identifying them as what they were, like where the
yeah,
context in which the photos were created and the reason they were created. That's one thing I could have done. There was a few times where so I did all the work and then I went back and I reread it and I kind of went, oh, that one mentions footprints too. I wonder if those footprints are
mm,
relevant. And I didn't go back and ask more questions. So occasionally, as I was proofreading, I came across things that I wondered more about. And but like I'm thinking of the one of the ones that's on a beach, and there's what AI describes as this trapezoidal rocky structure protruding from the
mm.
ground. And
Yeah,
it said it's man-made. I questioned the AI about it and said it's man-made. It doesn't look particularly functional. It's casting a shadow. Like it could tell me some things about it, but I had zero context for what its function
yeah,
in the photo was. So in
yeah,
some
and
ways, you're
that was
just at a
one.
dead end. I
That's
just hit
it.
a dead end there.
And that frankly, that was one where the technical information you were getting from the AI did you dirty. It's a it's an access ramp that
Oh,
it's an access ramp made
oh,
of sand that's been
okay.
put at the edge of the water. And so that was another paired photo where
Wait,
one
what?
that's right, one of the photos has like an access ramp bit made of sand right at the edge of the water, and then the other photo
Oh,
has just this lump of sand as the water has slowly been washing it away. The waves have been washing it away all day. And so
wow.
the AI somehow did not see that this was a replica of an access ramp, or it wasn't even. It didn't even get it wrong and say it is an access ramp. It
Hmm.
just missed the shape altogether, like
Completely.
completely. It didn't
Yeah,
mention it at all.
I
Yeah.
quizzed it. I'm like, is this man is human made?
Yeah.
What is it? No, it just looks artistic.
Yeah.
So
Well, and this
yeah.
was something that you and I talked about. Like maybe there, maybe kind of some of the visual vetting should have been done halfway through.
That's
Like
another way we could have done it.
yeah. So
Yeah.
instead of like the approach that we had, which made sense, was that you asked the AI to describe these images, got that information, rewrote it, passed it to me. I say accurate or inaccurate. That's
Hmm.
in a nutshell. But another approach that we could try that I think might elicit different results would be if you asked specific questions. Don't ask it to describe, don't ask it to create finished product. Ask the AI for, can you tell me the composition of this photo? Can you tell me the colors in this photo? Can you tell me what you think the focal points are? Whatever. Like ask a series of questions, and then that gets sent to someone to do the visual vetting, and I
Hmm.
can say accurate, accurate, inaccurate,
Mm.
way off base.
Hmm. Hmm.
and then
Hmm.
and then punt that back to you, so now you can take all of that information, and this saves you that feeling of like, oh, am I
Hmm.
writing something that is
Hmm.
based on inaccurate, like is this all wrong anyway? What's the point of this? That could skip, you could just
Mm.
eliminate all of that,
Hmm.
and then it comes back to me once you've written with information that is already cleared. You can
Hmm.
do more of the writing as opposed to the assembling. I wonder what that process would be. And I wonder what the end result would be.
That's really interesting, and partly because one of the problems I had was that once AI had phrased things, I didn't see a point in trying to rephrase them to sound more like me. And so, as I said earlier, I didn't do any rewriting. I just did a lot of cutting and pasting. Whereas if I had approached it in that way, I might have just had the pieces and then felt freer to write something.
Yeah.
Um, but and this may be a process that could be refined with
Yeah.
practice, but in the end, we're going to come down to the question was, is this a valuable process?
A
Is
hundred
this,
percent. 100%.
yeah.
And that's I think a really important question for, and again, the reason we're doing this in the first place is because um, the visual description job is being turned on its head anyway. It's for a lot of us in the who have been describers for a while, it's disappearing because anyone can get AI to describe an image for them. So why would a gallery or a museum hire someone if all they're going to do is run their images through AI, right? It doesn't matter if they're blind or sighted. There's no real added value if all you do is run them. They can do that. The gallery and museum can do that.
And they can edit it too.
And
They can
they can,
vet
that's
and
right. It's because they're
refine.
the, especially if they're the curatorial,
Yeah.
they can do
Yeah.
all that. They've got all that information. I've been thinking about this a lot as we've been doing this experiment. Like, is it worthwhile? I think the value in the model is the perspective of the blind low vision describer, right? Which is at least in part a perspective that is shared with the end user. I think this model could work and could be valuable if the focus is on the blind low vision describer writing for blind low vision end users. But that's my perspective. Like as a sighted guy, I'm just imagining what I think the value is.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Do
Um,
you feel like that's a value?
it is a value, but it's also a value that can be achieved with me as the consultant,
Yeah,
rather
that
not
doesn't that
as
feels
the
okay.
writer.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I don't. Uh, Full disclosure, I didn't love the work. Like the one advantage absolutely is that if we flip those roles, I earn more money. And as a member, as me with bills to pay, and as a member of the blind low vision community, I love more money. I'm in favor of more money. So that is a true benefit. Um, but I didn't love the work. And that's just me personally. I know blind people, low vision people involved in the writing process do love the work, and that's fantastic. But that is true that it did give me the opportunity to directly question the things that I wanted to question and to know that there was even a question there. So a detail like when I asked the AI for what's the artistic nature, like in what ways is this artistry, this photo, and it could say the embroidery on the backpack gives a splash of color. Well, okay, now I know that. And you might have mentioned that, but you might not. Like the AI might pull out a detail that leads me down a path that you might not pull out
yeah,
because you don't know that that's a knowledge gap for me. And so that might not even come out me as a consultant because I'm only working with what you give me. And if there's a detail that you don't give me because it doesn't strike you as particularly relevant, I won't even think to ask about it.
yeah,
So
yeah,
there's that. That's definitely an added value where I'm getting just a splash, a whole big splashy splash of information that I would not quite get from you because you would be curating through your experience as a describer, whereas the AI is just going to throw everything at the wall and something might catch my attention that I wouldn't have an opportunity to know about if it's being filtered through you. So
yeah.
super complex, super complex.
It really is. And I think it's really interesting. Like obviously, big picture, anytime there's an opportunity to to provide more employment, to provide more representation, to provide more leadership opportunities for folks in the disability community, that should be considered and we should try and get down that path whenever we can, right?
Hmm, hmm, hmm.
Whether or not this is the specific mechanism for that, I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. It's really hard to say. I'm super glad we did this
Oh
experiment.
gosh.
I would love to try it again with the different
Mm.
model, like that
Hmm,
with the
hmm,
model of asking for component, like asking
hmm,
for raw
hmm.
data, visual data that you
Right.
can then write to see what happens there.
Mm, interesting.
But phase one. Okay, one last question before we wrap up, Chris. Have you given any thought to how you want to be credited in this work? Like normally, this if I write a description, it would be, written by J.J. Hunt. Period. That's easy. How do you want to be credited with this in this project?
That's a fascinating question. Off the top of my head, I'm going to say compose image descriptions composed by a collaboration between AI, Christine Malec, and JJ Hunt.
All three
I think
wrapped up into
so.
one. So don't
Yeah.
even break down the roles, just all three
A
composed in a
collaboration.
collaboration. I
Yeah.
like it. That's I
Yeah.
like that. I like that. Very cool. Thanks for doing this with me, Chris. I
Yeah, I
really
know. I love experimenting. And I know you said it earlier, but I just want to give a double thumbs up again to the Disability Collective for giving us the opportunity to do our wacky little experimental projects. And they're always so behind us. Like, yes, let's try that. And
yeah.
it doesn't always lead to it didn't lead to the best descriptions have ever been composed, but it's part of an ongoing conversation, which the Disability Collective excels at, which is
That's
having
it.
ongoing, productive conversations. And
Yeah. And being
AI is
disability
here.
led.
Yes, and being
Like
disability led and
disability led.
seeing how we can AI is it's just here. We can't pretend it's not. So
Yeah.
how can we what are good ways to leverage it? What are not good ways? And just let's just experiment. And so thank you, Disability Collective.
To learn more about 20 years later, the inaccessibility of Ontario, please visit thedisabilitycollective.com/20 years later. That's 20 years later. There, you'll find the exhibition access guide, which contains all the photographs and descriptions referenced in this episode. Links can be found in this episode's show notes. And if you're in Toronto, please head on down to the Daniels Spectrum at 585 Dundas Street East, where the full exhibition will be on display between October 9th and 26th, with the descriptions available via QR code. I'm JJ Hunt. On behalf of Christine Malec and the entire Disability Collective crew, thanks for listening.